Happy Friday, and welcome once again to the latest episode of Mystery Unsolved. You know what we do here, you know the deal. Tonight's episode, we're going to be starting the first of pretty much the rest of this season, Mysterious Disappearances. And this one, this one's a little interesting because we're not just dealing with one person mysteriously disappearing, or even two or three for that matter. We're dealing with 10 mysterious disappearances in national parks. Yeah, that's apparently a thing. And we're going to analyze this and go over it on tonight's episode. So without further ado, Mystery Unsolved, 10 mysterious disappearances in national parks. I don't know how thorough or detailed each case is, so we might breeze through this really fast. No worries though. I will draw my analysis, theories, and conclusions at the end of the article. All right. So this article is called Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at 10 mysterious disappearances in national parks. For this list, we'll be looking at the creepiest, most fascinating, and most unsettling cases of people going missing inside U.S. national parks and forests. We won't, however, be including individuals who were thankfully found. Well, obviously, because that would okay. Which of these stories unsettles you the most? Let us know in the comments. All right, so they don't give you a number, so we're just going to get right into it. So the first one is Michael Faceri at Yosemite National Park. So we're already starting with the top-notch park. Yosemite. Some people are born for the outdoors, and Michael Faceri was one of them. The man pushed aside a conventional lifestyle to live one out of adventure and exploration, and in 2005, he decided to hike solo through Yosemite National Park. Okay. So there we go. Where did I leave off? Okay. And not just the touristy areas of Yosemite either, but the parts reserved for the hardcore adventurers. Vasari was very independent and liked to live off the grid. So it wasn't until his wilderness permit expired that people realized something was wrong. A massive search was investigated, and even involved the Marines. They quickly found Fasiri's backpack, which spelled very bad news and greatly concerned his family. Unfortunately, no other trace of Fasiri has ever been found. So we're starting off with a little bit of a really big question mark, and I almost stopped mid-sentence because it didn't read well to me, and I almost wanted to read it again to make sure I had read it right. So I'm going to go back. Fasiri was very independent and liked to live off the grid. So it wasn't until his wilderness permit expired that people realized something was wrong. So I don't hike, so I'm going to need some details on this. Do you like purchase a wilderness permit, and does it run for the day? So when it expires, people are like, well, wait a minute, he let his his permit expire. Because obviously, if a day went by or two, then that doesn't make sense. So I imagine a wilderness permit must be for that particular day. So you have so many hours to use it, and then when it expires, so someone like him probably would have renewed it because he was going to finish hiking the next day. Do I have that right? Any hikers here? You can vouch for that. A massive search. Yeah, so they got the Marines involved. So our first issue here is, like I said, I don't know how much detail is in these. This one, we don't have a hell of a lot to go on other than his wilderness permit, which apparently exists. That's a thing. I didn't know that. I don't hike. That's a thing, and that's pretty much the only thing they have to go on. And no other trace of Fasiri has ever been found. Okay, well, that's very little to go on. Not sure what happened to him, but then again, maybe other cases will provoke some possible theories. Also, is this the only case in Yosemite? I doubt it. Let's continue. Like I said, not the only one. Ruthin Rupper, Yosemite National Park. Yosemite is so enormous that it's home to countless disappearances. Finding missing people here is like finding a needle in a haystack. Rupper, whatever it is, planned to hike from Yosemite Falls to an unincorporated community called Foresta, which is about a 6-hour walk southeast. She never made it to Foresta. It's believed that Ruppert's limited eyesight played a substantial role in her disappearance. One of her eyes was a prosthetic, and the other had been treated for an infection the very same day that she embarked on her 15-mile hike. Well, at least this woman has given us a little idea as to why she disappeared. I'll give my comment after. Rupert's backpack was found 8 years after she disappeared in the region of Fireplace Creek, which is about halfway between Yosemite Falls and Foresta. There's two very interesting things here that I'm going to point out as to why she disappeared. First of all, she has one prosthetic eye and the other one had an infection literally the same day that she embarked on the hike. So my question is, if you know you only have one eye and even that eye isn't exactly healthy, why would you go hiking 15 miles? I don't care how good of a hiker you may think you are, if you only have one real eye and that eye is infected, why are you hiking in general? Never mind the 15 miles. Why are you hiking to begin with? Why are you doing anything for that matter? And also, the second thing I noticed, Robert's backpack was found 8 years after she disappeared in the region of Fireplace Creek. Now, two things come out at me on this one. One, if her backpack was found 8 years later, that tells me one of two things. One, that her backpack must have maybe gone off in some brush and it was never really noticed until 8 years later. Or two, that shit was right out in the open and it was never seen for 8 years because people normally don't. Again, they just said in the beginning, Yosemite is so big that a lot of people go missing. So there's a good chance that the part in which she went missing that she wanted to hike on is probably not a place that most hikers want to hike. So there's a very good chance. Again, I don't know this. I'm just, bear with me, go with me on this. The spot that she picked to hike isn't one that's, for normal hikers. So it went unnoticed. Could have been behind a rock. Could be right out in the open. Could be in a bush. But I'm saying that her backpack was right out in the open, never got discovered because in 8 years, most people just didn't do it. I could be wrong. That's a bit of a stretch, but Morgenheimer, Grand Canyon National Park. You thinking what I'm thinking? At the time of his disappearance, Morgenheimer was working for a rafting company called Tour West. On second thought, which provided guided tours through the Grand Canyon. On day 6 of an 8-day trip, Heimer vanished in the Pumpkin Springs area of the park. The lead guide was speaking to Heimer when he was distracted by a client. When he went to speak to Heimer again, the young man was gone. The guide didn't think much of it at first, believing Heimer had simply wandered off. But when 3 hours had gone by without a word, Heimer was officially declared missing. An extensive search lasting 6 days was carried out, but to no avail. So this one, I read Grand Canyon, so immediately I thought maybe he just fell off the Grand Canyon itself. Again, I've never been to the Grand Canyon or the Grand Canyon National Park. It's probably one and the same, but my point is, you could definitely fall off there. However, it was a rafting company, so either way, there's a good chance that the two ways that this man could have disappeared, brutal, very brutal. Which again, I'm going to save to the end. Derek Luking, Great Smoky Mountains National Park. In March 2012, a young orderly named Duke Derek Luking visited the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, which resides in both Tennessee and North Carolina. Only, it was under some bizarre circumstances. When Luking failed to arrive at work, a mutual friend called his roommate, who in turn notified Luking's family. They looked through Luking's computer and found searches for the national park. Luking was also spotted on surveillance at a motel near the park. Luking's car was later found outside a trail containing roughly $1,000 of survival equipment and his wallet. They also found an ambiguous and unsettling note that read simply, "Don't try to follow me." Tragically, there was no trace of Luking himself. So that one, it went dark, didn't it? Like, did you feel that? Like, that one went really dark. I was kind of confused in the beginning when I read it because it said, which resides in both Tennessee and North Carolina, end of sentence, only it was under bizarre circumstances. Like, him visiting the park was under bizarre circumstances? Because then it doesn't really tell us why. So they don't tell us where he works, but he failed to arrive at work. And then a mutual friend called his roommate, who in turn notified Luking's family. They looked through his computer and found searches for the national park. So on his computer, on his laptop, I would imagine, he left. They're like, okay, he went to the park. But then he was near a motel. That's where it gets creepy. So there's a chance that this guy's theories open up because he's at a shady motel. And his $1,000 of survival equipment and his wallet are still there. And there's a note, "Don't try to follow me." That's creepy. We're gonna have some fun breaking that down later. Paula Jean Weldon, Great Mountain National Forest. This one sounds familiar. I believe we did an episode of Mystery Unsolved on one Paula Jean Weldon. Nevertheless, let us read. The Vermont State Police exists. The Vermont State Police exists because of Paula Jean Weldon. One woman is the reason Vermont State Police exists. Weldon was an 18-year-old college student who decided to walk the long trail in Vermont. Weldon hitchhiked from school to the trail, and when she failed to return for her studies, her roommate notified the administrators. They in turn contacted the authorities, and a massive search for Weldon was undertaken. It involved the National Guard, firefighters, and even students from the school, which had to close to help in the search. But despite the exclusiveness, nothing ever came of it, and the resulting investigation was fiercely criticized for being shoddy. Just 7 months later, the Vermont State Police was created to prevent poorly run investigations in the future. So, crappy police at first, and they're like, "This is some college kid, who cares? Like, we're just gonna look, you know?" But yeah, I definitely did a case on her. So again, I can't, I'm live right now, so I can't trace my episodes back. I probably could on here, but that would be weird. Let us continue. Alfred, these names, I swear. Beilharz? Alfred Beilharz, Rocky Mountain National Park. Rocky Mountain High. Unfortunately, it's not just adults that go missing in national parks. In July of 1938, wow, we're going back in time, young Alfred Beilharz was vacationing with his family in Colorado's Rocky Mountain National Park. Beilharz was either 3 or 4 years old when he went missing. Oh shit. Lyle was hiking with his family when he made his way to the back of the line. If he's 3 or 4, like, why are you even... I'll continue. At some point, the boy went off the trail and disappeared from his family's lives forever. A wide search on both land and water was conducted, but came to nothing. Some eyewitnesses reported seeing Beilharz with an unknown person sometime after his disappearance, and Beilharz's father also believed that his child had been abducted. So my big question here is, if you have a child that's 3 or 4, why are you allowing him to walk on his own on a hike in a national park? Like, just hold his hand or carry him? Like, common sense, which apparently was lacking in 1938 in Rocky Mountain National Park. Glenn and Bessie Hyde, Grand Canyon National Park. We're going back to the Grand Canyon, folks. This young couple married on April 10th, 1928. Jesus, let's go further back in time, 10 years later, to 1938. For their honeymoon, they wanted to traverse the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon and run its world-famous rapids. So you can tell what they bonded over. In the process, Bessie Hyde was to become the first woman to successfully run the Grand Canyon. Glenn built his own wooden boat, and the newly married couple set off. Oh boy, I don't like the sound of this. They were last seen on November 18th, and Glenn's father reported them missing sometime after. On December 19th, their empty boat was found floating in the water, with all of their supplies still on the boat. Numerous theories have been put forth regarding the disappearance, but it's more than likely that the Hydes simply fell out of the boat while running the rapids and drowned. How good was your homemade boat there, Glenn? I'm sorry, too soon? Thelma Pauline Melton. Hold on, am I? Okay. I was just wondering why some people are getting their middle names put in there. Thelma Pauline Melton, Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And we're going back to the Great Smoky Mountains. 58-year-old Thelma Pauline Melton was spending time in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in the fall of 1981. We're traveling forward. In 1981 with some friends. They decided to go hiking on the Deep Creek Trail, while Melton's husband stayed behind with the camper. Why? While on the hike, Melton suddenly picked up her pace and walked ahead of her friends before disappearing beyond a hill. They believed that she was racing back to the camper for some reason, but when they got there, Melton's husband reported that she'd never arrived. A huge search was quickly undertaken, but nothing was ever found of Melton. And even more mysteriously, there was no evidence that a hiker had wandered off the trail. Ooh, I get a little chill there. How would you know, first of all? How would you know that she kind of just, that she never, how would you know that there was no evidence that a hiker had wandered off the trail? Hold on a second. It was getting dark on this side, so let's see my nice features. Looking good, Justin. Thank you. The thing that I thought was very interesting was the husband stayed behind with the camper. It's like, why did he stay behind? And then she was like, I don't trust my husband at the camper by himself, because he's probably not by himself. I might be grasping at straws here, but yeah. Floyd Roberts III. Grand Canyon National Park. Grand Canyon, all right. Are you keeping track? I'm not. Where are we at? 2, 2, and 2? The Grand Canyon claimed another victim in 52-year-old Floyd Roberts. On June 17, 2016, Roberts was walking through the canyon with his friend and his friend's daughter. Sometime along the way, Roberts decided to split from the group and take an alternate route up a hill. Why he did this remains a mystery. When he failed to meet up with the others, Roberts was quickly declared missing. The resulting search found no conclusive evidence as to what happened, and Roberts simply disappeared into thin air. Where did he go? Most curiously, why did he decide to split from the group? These questions may never be answered. Dennis Martin, Great Smoky Mountains National Park. How many national parks are there? I know, I should probably know this, me being a little bit of a history buff, but I don't pay attention to national parks. They interest me. I'd say I have like a 3% interest in national parks, which is not enough to look into it. We return one last time. This is the last missing person at the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. We return one last time to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park for the story of young Dennis Martin. The 6-year-old was on a big camp. Another kid missing. Is this going to be the same way? The 6-year-old was on a big camping trip involving multiple families. Multiple families, just keep that in mind. To have some fun, the children planned to surprise the adults by popping out of some bushes, and Martin's father watched him run behind a nearby shrub. However, he failed to return with the other children and was never seen again. An enormous search for the boy was conducted, with well over 1,000 people combing through 56 square miles of forest. To this day, it is the largest search in the park's long history. And that was 10. So what happened to little Dennis Martin? He went behind a little shrub, and he was never seen again. All right, before we get to our theories and stuff, we'll go to each one, and I'll give you a theory on what I think happened. Let me first figure out all the parks, because that's going to help us here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay. Michael Fasseri and Ruth Ann Rupper, I think, are the only two that we heard in Yosemite National Park. The only two. The rest were either Grand Canyon or Great Smoky Mountains, right? Grand Canyon, Great Smoky Mountain, Great Smoky Mountain. Rocky Mountain. Okay. Grand Canyon, Great Smoky Mountain, 2 and 3. Grand Canyon, Great Smoky Mountain, that's 4. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have 4 Great Smoky Mountains National Parks, 3 Grand Canyon National Parks, 1 Rocky Mountain National Park, and 2 Yosemite. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is let's go to the spot where the most people went missing, and that would be Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Let's see if we notice a trend, shall we? So the first person who goes missing there, according to this list, Derek Luking. So Derek Luking, if you remember, he was the guy that he failed to arrive at work. His roommate called his family to notify them. The family looked on his computer, found that he was going to a national park, and his stuff that was worth roughly $1,000 was still there, along with his wallet, and there was a note that said, "Don't try to follow me." So the location, I was going to say that based off the park itself, but this guy kicks it off, and it's just kind of one of those, I think his search is way too wide. I think there's a chance that he could have gone missing in the park, but I think there's just as much of a chance that he could have gone missing from the motel, because there's that note, "Don't try to follow me." Like, who was that for? Like, maybe he just disappeared and ran off to make a new life for himself. Possibility. Or of course he went missing in the big giant park. But with this one just sounds a little shady, so I'm gonna go with a totally different direction here, and I'm gonna say that he either I think he started a new life for himself. I don't think he was happy. The next we're gonna, instead of going in order, I'm gonna go by the parks to make it a little easier. That was the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, correct? My memory sucks. Yeah, okay. Thelma Pauline Melton, if you remember her, she was a 58-year-old with the. Oh yeah, she was a 58-year-old who she went ahead because she wanted to. Well, her husband stayed behind. I turned the light on and it still gets dark. What the heck? Um, and then her husband reported that she never arrived, and supposedly there was no evidence that a hiker ever wandered off the trail. So there's a chance here that this woman never wandered off the hike, but they never found her body, apparently. It doesn't say, like, yeah, it says a huge search was quickly undertaken, but nothing was ever found. That seems a little weird to me. If there was a huge search and a hiker, there was no evidence that a hiker had ever wandered off the trail, how much of a huge search, what really was it then? Because you never found her. You never found her body. Nothing. So how good of a search did you really do if she never wandered off the goddamn trail? You know what I mean? Like, is there a swamp? Is there, like, water? Is there terrain? Is there sand? Like, is there just a lot of brush? I mean, it's a national park, but, like, you get what I'm saying. I don't want to keep repeating myself. I'll just conclude it with this one. I think her body might still be just caught up somewhere, depending on where she is. If there's, like, a lot of, like, shrubbery, if there's water, or if there's just a lot of like a ton of just, terrain, like forest, thick forest, her body could be there, and they just went around it. That's the only thing I got. Great Smoky Mountains National Park number 3, Dennis Martin. That was the 6-year-old boy. I think that's the last one we have, actually. So there was only 3 of those then. 1, 2. Oh, okay. Paula Jean Weldon went missing at Green Mountain National Park. So that's 3, 3, that's 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So 3. Okay. I got it. Don't worry, I got it in my head. All right, so Dennis Martin, he was the last case. He was a 6-year-old boy that went on. He went behind some brush, so a nearby shrub, and he failed to return. An enormous search was conducted. Over 1,000 people, and in 56 square miles, they never found him. So anytime a child's involved, I like to think that somewhere there unfortunately might be somebody lurking around and abducted him. That would be my first. This one doesn't mention an abduction, but again, there's a lot of people. Maybe because the adults are having fun, the kids are having fun. Nobody notices the strange person that's lurking nearby that snatches the kid, never be seen again. Because obviously, here's my thing. 56 square miles of forest, 1,000 people. To me, that sounds like if the kid went missing and he somehow, like, something happened to him and he died and his body was in the park, you'd find it based off of those numbers. But because they didn't, my theory is going to have to be that he went missing or that he got abducted. Someone took him. All right, those were the 3 Great Smoky Mountains National Parks. Now we're going to go with the Grand Canyon National Parks. And we are 30 minutes in, so we're making good time. This will be a good case. I like these. I haven't had a long case in a while. All right, Grand Canyon National Park. Morgenheimer, he was the first one that we came across at Grand Canyon. And remember, he was the one that worked for the rafting company. He vanished in the Pumpkin Springs area of the park. I'm not familiar with that. The lead guide was going to speak to him. When they spoke to someone else, he was gone. An extensive search lasting 6 days was carried out, but to no avail. So unfortunately, I have 2 theories on what happened to him. And I think his demise is probably one of the more brutal ones. My first theory is it's Grand Canyon National Park. So there's a good chance that he kind of somehow, some way, went off the cliff and just fell to the abyss to his death. Or it was a rafting company. So if they were whitewater rafting, as good of a rafter as he might have thought he was, the rapids, the heavy water, and the rocks, all it takes is one split thing and boom. And again, an extensive search lasting 6 days was carried out, but they never found. Well, he could have gone under the water. Again, he could have got up into some like brush, some swampy, terrain. I keep saying terrain because I don't know what else to call it. But yeah, those are my 2 theories on what happened to one Morgenheimer. All right, Green Mountain, that was not it. Rocky Mountain. All right, Grand Canyon number 2, Glenn and Bessie Hyde. This was the married couple. She would have been the first woman. Remember their homemade boat, because Glenn had made the boat, and their boat was found floating in the water with all their supplies still on board. Numerous theories were put forth. They don't tell you the theories, so we have to conclude our own, which is fine. But it's more than likely the Hyde simply fell out of the boat while running the rapids and drowned. I'll go with that. Yeah, that probably makes the most sense. And again, Glenn made his own damn boat. It's a homemade boat. And I don't know how good of a boat maker he was. I never knew the man, obviously. But I think making your own boat and then testing that shit out in heavy, rapid water, probably not a good idea. So yeah, I think that they probably fell out of the boat and drowned, unfortunately. And then the last Grand Canyons one is Floyd Roberts III. If you remember, he was the 52-year-old that was walking through the canyon with his friend and friend's daughter. He decided to go ahead of them, and they don't know why he decided to go ahead of them. And he was declared missing. No conclusive evidence as to what happened. He disappeared into thin air. And why did he split from the group? And these questions may never be answered. Okay. This one's really vague. All we know is that this guy hiked with his friend and his friend's daughter. He went ahead of them, and then that was the last anyone ever saw or heard from him. It doesn't even say that a search was made. So, and this was in 2016. The resulting search found no conclusive evidence as to what happened. He just completely disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to him. I don't know. Like, there's a 58-year-old man. 52, sorry. A 52-year-old man who goes missing. They don't find a body in the park. They don't find a wandering person who looks like they're lost. They don't find either one. Could he have walked out of the park? Maybe. Again, Grand Canyon National Park, maybe he fell off the damn cliff and to his death. Maybe he fell into the waters. I don't know. Now we're going to take a look at the 2 single national parks. So that was Rocky Mountain National Park, Alfred Beilhart's. That was the 3 or 4-year-olds. This is the one that just leaves me scratching my head. Why wouldn't you hold the boy's hand or carry him? A wide search on both land and water was conducted, but came to nothing. They saw him supposedly with another person. So yeah, unfortunately I'm gonna have to chalk this one up with the same with Dennis Martin. I think that a person abducted him, because even if you leave a kid behind, even for a split second, that's all it takes for them to get, you know. And then of course Paula Jean Weldon, Great Mountain National Forest. I don't remember what my conclusions were about Paula Jean Weldon in the video I did on her, but basically she hitchhiked from school, and when she failed to return from her studies, this was a forest, a national forest. So there's a lot of stuff that could have that could have happened to her. She could have been abducted, kidnapped. She could have been kidnapped. She could have been killed. I think she was probably kidnapped, taken out of the forest, and killed. If that's different than my other video, then sue me, you know, like. And then last but not least, the two Yosemite ones, Ruth Ann Rupert. Remember, the Yosemite is enormous. She's the one with the eyes. So she has one prosthetic eye, and her other eye is infected. So right away, I'm asking WTF. Okay, like, why would you hike with no good eyes? Did you have a third we don't know about? Why? Why? Her backpack was found 8 years later. Now, I know I said in the beginning that like maybe her backpack was, that's a long stretch. That's a bit of a far-fetched idea. But I like to think that her backpack, maybe not in obvious view, but like away from the path, but the trail that she walked, like decided to hike on, was so less traveled, Robert Frost reference, that this is why it took 8 years for someone to find her backpack in general. Now, as to what I think happened to her, I mean, obviously she couldn't see, so we know something bad happened to her, because if you can't see, chances are you're going to come across something, run into something. She never made it to Foresta. And this park's huge. My first theory, because the park's so huge, there are parts of that park that people probably haven't treaded upon in years. There's a good chance her body's just sitting right flat out there in the open, just like I said with the backpack. Because it's so big, you wouldn't think to look there. There could be like a nice little brush area. She could be right face down in the middle of it. I think her body's probably still there. It's probably a skeleton by now, if it hasn't just completely deteriorated at all. It doesn't even say when she went missing. So, and last but not least, we start with the first one, Michael Faceri at Yosemite. He was a conventional lifestyle. He liked to adventure, and in 2005, he went solo to the park. He lived off the grid, and he's the one that had his wilderness permit expired. So I'm starting with the very thing that I didn't understand. So that wilderness permit aside, he never made it out of the park. We can draw that conclusion at least. They found his backpack, and they were greatly concerned his family. Unfortunately, no trace of Facili has ever been found. So again, I'm going to chalk this one up to the same theory as Ruth Ann Rupert. I think both of their bodies, I think both of them never left the park. And Yosemite is so big, it has such different parts of the trail, that a person could literally just go missing. And as much of a search as you want to conduct, you have to stop it at some point, because you'll be there for weeks trying to discover it, which means that you could literally have walked around someone's body and not know it, or just not go in that area, because certain areas just have never been traveled upon, or they haven't been traveled upon in years. So I think, unfortunately, something happened to them. they end up they end up dying, and boom, their bodies just laid there to decay. So those are my theories on the 10 mysterious disappearances at national parks. I had fun. I think it was very creepy, and to think that 10 people went missing. There's probably more. Those are just the 10 creepiest. The fact that so many people go missing in national parks, you don't think it's a thing until you come across it, which I did. And when I did come across it, I was like, I have to make this an episode of Mystery Unsolved. I do hope you enjoyed this episode on the 10 mysterious disappearances at national parks. And if you do like it, I haven't done this in a while, give the channel a like over on YouTube, PlasmaticWriterTV. Give me a follow. If you have any comments, of course, they're always welcome. It's been a while since I've got a good comment, or a comment at all. Do stay tuned for next week's episode, which will, of course, be on another disappearance, because I said the rest of the season will be on disappearances. I just don't know who is particularly on, but do stay tuned for next week's episode. And for Mystery Unsolved, this is Justin Bienvenu. Have a good one.